Srila Prabhupada always described Caitanya Mahaprabhu's movement by giving reference to the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. And there's the famous prayer that was written by Srinivasacharya. And it begins by saying, Krishna Kirtana Gana Nartana Paro Premamritam Bonidi. Shh. Please. Shanti. It has taken me 18 years to come back here. So Krishna Kirtana Gana Nartana Paro Premamritam Bonidi. Srinivasacharya explains that the Goswamis of Vrindavan, they were always absorbed in 2 activities. And the 2 activities were chanting Hare Krishna and dancing. And by the process of chanting Hare Krishna and dancing, they were always swimming in the ocean of love of God. So this is Lord Chaitanya's movement, and this is what all of us are meant to do. We're meant to chant Hare Krishna, and we're meant to dance. We're meant to chant Hare Krishna very carefully. We're meant to chant Hare Krishna free from offensive mentality. We're supposed to concentrate on the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and then we're meant to dance. Caitanya Charitamrita describes that 500 years ago, when Lord Caitanya was here, he would conduct the Rath Yatra. He would be present in the Rath Yatra ceremony. How many of you have read about that in Caitanya Charitamrita? Who has read Lord Caitanya at Rath Yatra? Only a few people. Lord Caitanya, he organized all the devotees to participate in the Rath Yatra. And he and his devotees, they would be at the temple for the Mangal Arti, and they would be at the temple when Lord Jagannath would come from the temple, and they would be there when Lord Jagannath would go up to the cart. And then Lord Caitanya had very nicely organized Kirtan. And he organized many different Kirtan groups, not just one Kirtan group, but many different groups. And in each Kirtan group, he would have like a principal or chief mridanga player, maybe 2 or 3, I can't remember. And then he would have kartal players, and he would have principal singers, and they would have backup singers, and he would have dancers in each group. Like wherever Lord Caitanya was, and he would wander from group to group. But Lord Caitanya would be singing and he would be dancing. And he would have devotees like Bhakreshwar Pandit. Caitanya Charitamrita describes how Bhakreshwar Pandit, he could dance for 72 hours non-stop. Is that 3 days? Can you imagine dancing for 3 days non-stop? But he would do that. Lord Caitanya would glorify Bhakreshwar Pandit. He said he is like one wing. If I had 2 wings like Bhakreshwar Pandit, immediately I would fly to go to Vrindavan. So this chanting and dancing was very dear to Lord Caitanya. And Mahaprabhu would begin the Kirtan by singing. And he would sing the sweet names of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then he would wander from one Kirtan group to the next Kirtan group. And in each Kirtan group, he would chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And he would do very mystical things when he was in each group. Like there'd be the circle of devotees, and each of the devotees in each group, to them it would appear that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was just looking at them and chanting with them. Just like when Sri Krishna did his Rasa Leela, he was dancing with so many gopis, but each gopi felt as though Krishna was just dancing with them alone. So Mahaprabhu would do that in the Kirtan. And then when Mahaprabhu's heart would start to become stirred by chanting the Maha Mantra, then Mahaprabhu would start to dance. And Kaviraj Goswami explains that Lord Chaitanya's dancing was indescribably beautiful. He said that his dancing and the movement of his arms before Lord Jagannath, it was just like a dramatic performance of the love of God. He would chant and he would dance and he would chant and he would dance. So this is Lord Chaitanya's movement. If all of us, if we want to make the most of our lives, and if we wish to actually perfect this gift of the human life, what we need to do is we need to set aside all other considerations and come together and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and dance in ecstasy. And you may say, well, how can we set aside all of our other considerations? Because we're all family people. We all have our work and we all have so many duties that we have to perform. We have to take care of the wife, we have to take care of children, we have all of our social duties that we have to take care of. But still we should remember the words that Shukadeva Goswami spoke to the sages of Naimisharanya when he was speaking about the dharma of every living being. And there, Shukadeva Goswami says, Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti raposuje. Ahaituky, aprtihata, yayatma, suprasidati. Who knows that verse? Anyone? Few hands come. That's a very important verse. It's in the first canto of the Bhagavatam. So Shukadeva Goswami tells, Sutta Goswami, he explains to the sages of Naimisharanya, what is dharma and what is our true duty? And he says, Savai pumsam paro dharmo, jito bhakti raposuje. He says the highest duty for everyone in human society is to engage in Sri Krishna's pure devotional service. That is our big duty. He doesn't say, don't do your other duties. But he says, be mindful of what your real duty is. And that makes me think of an example that Srila Prabhupada has given. And Prabhupada gave the example of a very big rich man, say like Mukesh Ambani. That's his name? Who can be more rich than Mukesh Ambani? He has money dropping out of his ears. He's so rich. I read that he recently had the marriage of his daughter. How many crore rupees did he spend on that wedding? Phenomenal. Something phenomenal. But say Mr. Ambani, in the morning, he has to go to work and he calls his driver. And the driver comes with some big beautiful car, and then Mr. Ambani sits down in the back seat of the car. And then he takes his phone and he starts checking his schedule for the day, checking what his appointments are. And he says, well, at 9 o'clock I have this meeting, at 10 o'clock I have this meeting. in the middle of it, he speaks to the driver, and he says, Prabhu, have you taken the car for servicing recently? And he says, yes, sir. Did you have the oil changed? Yes, sir. Then he goes back to his calendar and he says, well, at 12 o'clock I have a meeting with this person, and at 1 o'clock I have a meeting with this person. Have you had the tires checked? Yes, sir. And, are all the insurance paid? Yes, sir. And then he goes back to his schedule and he sees, so Mr. Ambani, he has his most important duties and his schedule, you see, but still he doesn't forget the other stuff. He doesn't forget, is the car okay? Is everything running nicely? Have you paid all your taxes? So forth and so on. So in the same way, we have our big duty. And our big duty is to love Krishna. Our big duty is to remember Krishna. Our acharyas have taught us that the first principle is to always remember Krishna, whatever we're doing. And the first thing which is prohibited is ever to forget Krishna. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So, Sukha Goswami said, Savai pumsam paro dharmo, that the paro dharma for everyone in human society is to engage in Krishna's pure devotional service. And then he gives his, qualification of what pure devotional service is. Because a lot of people may have some idea about what bhakti is. And people can speculate on what is bhakti, or people can have imaginative ideas about what bhakti is. But Sukha Goswami says, ahaituky, aprtihata. And ahaituky, that means that devotional service should be unmotivated. No strings attached. It's not that any of us are performing bhakti for some ulterior motive. Why do we do bhakti? We do bhakti because we love Krishna. We do bhakti just because we want to serve Krishna. It's not even that we're doing bhakti because, like in the beginning, we may have the conception that we're doing bhakti because Krishna is God and we should have devotion to God. But in the higher sense, we just perform bhakti out of love. Because we want to love Krishna, because he's the most lovable person. So ahaituky, no strings attached, no cause, no reason, no ulterior motive, no agenda, to be performed bhakti. It's not that we say, well, Krishna, I will do your bhakti, but I want this in return. Krishna, I want to do your bhaktis, and Krishna, I want you to give me a bigger house. Or Krishna, I will do your bhakti. Krishna, please let my daughter get married. Or Krishna, I will do your bhakti. Krishna, give me something. But a devotee doesn't ask anything from Krishna. Nothing. There's that verse in Caitainya Charitamrita, Bhakti Mukti Siddhi Kami Shakaliya Shanti Krishna Bhakti Nishkama Ahaituky Shanta. That you have people who are materialists, they're called bhuktis. They want something in return. Bhukti, I want something. A mukti, a person, some people, some translators, they want mukti. I want material things, I want mukti, I want liberation. Siddhi, I want cities. But that's all based on something I want. And Caitainya Charitamrita explains this because those people, they want something and they're hankering for something for themselves. In their hearts, they're never satisfied and peaceful. But from the other side, he says, Krishna Bhakti Nishkama Ataiva Shanta. That the Krishna Bhakti, he has no personal motivation in anything that he does. Na dhanam, na janam, na sungatim, kapitam bhajagadish kamai. Lord said, I don't want dhanam, I don't want wealth, janam, I don't want followers. Kavitam sundarim, I don't want to hear the beautiful flowery words of the Vedas that explain, that life in this material world could be something extraordinary and wonderful. Because all of us know that life in this material world is temporary. We know that the soul is eternal, but we know that all these bodies in this world are all temporary bodies. We know that we've taken birth, this body has taken birth, this body is going to die. The only thing which is certain is death. So na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim kavitam, na jagadish kamai. He says, Mama janmani janmanishwari. What does that mean? That means birth after birth. Birth after birth, there's only one thing that I want. And he says that's Bhakti. Don't want anything else. I don't want name, I don't want fame, I don't want reputation, I don't want wealth, I don't want followers, I don't want any of this business. He says, Mama Janmani Janmanishwari. And when he says Janmani Janmanishwari, what does he truly mean? He says birth after birth. So that birth after birth also means, and I don't want liberation. I'm prepared, if you like, dear Lord, that I will take, 1,000,000 births in the Sultanate of Oman. As long as I can engage in your pure devotional service. Like taking 1,000,000 births in Oman, it doesn't seem so attractive. If we have to report to work every day, and if we have to bear the heat of the summer, and we have to ultimately grow old and die. But Mahaprabhu says, he says, I don't mind all that as long as I can have the consciousness of engaging in your pure devotional service. So ahaituky, unmotivated, and aprtihata. And aprtihata, what does that mean? It means unbroken. It means undisturbed. It's like Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Arjuna, you should engage in unbroken devotional service. And he says, by engaging in unbroken devotional service, by my grace, you will transcend the effects of the three modes of material nature, and you will come to the spiritual platform of life. You will come to the brahma-bhuta, to the spiritual platform. And then he defines what is the spiritual platform of life. And there he says, what is that verse? Brahma-bhuta prasannatma, na sochiti na pumsam. Sarveshu bhuteshu na bhakti. He says, brahma-bhuta prasannatma. When we become spiritual, we become satisfied in the heart. Heart becomes peaceful. And let us think now, everyone. Let us think for just a second. Who really has a peaceful heart? Because we're so caught up in so many, problems in life today. Whose heart is really peaceful? The material world is hard to find, but if you come to the spiritual platform of life, your heart becomes completely satisfied, completely peaceful. The brahma-bhuta prasannatma na sochiti na pumsam. What does that mean? Na sochiti na pumsam. Can you tell me? Speak up.
There is no grief. Na sochiti na pumsam. No hankering and no grief.
No hankering, no lamentation. Like in this world, what is our life like? We're always hankering for something more. We always want something more. We always, like, I always talk about the people in UAE or people in Dubai. And I don't know the situation over here. But most people, they come out there to UAE, and job and they start working in Sharjah because the rents are low in Sharjah, and then because everybody wants to work real hard, then they think, oh, let's move out of Sharjah and move to Dubai. And then their first destination is like Dubai or something like that. And then they work harder, and then they think, well, let's move to Jumeirah. And then they move to Jumeirah. And then after moving to Jumeirah, they work harder, and they think, well, let's move to Al Barsha. Or let's move to the Arabian ranches. Or let's move to some other super extraordinary place, Always hankering for something more, and something more, and something more. But Krishna says that when we come to the spiritual platform of life, no more hankering and no more lamentation. No more lamenting about the things that we lose in this material world, because everything in this world is going to be lost. Has everybody had that realization? Who's had that realization? You're not going to keep anything in this world. When your karma is finished in this body, everything material from this life, you're going to leave it behind. You're not going to take it with you. Nasochati, nakangshati, samak sarveshu bhuteshu. What does that mean? Apurva Mataji, you know what it means? She says, equal to all living beings. You have this samadristi. Samadristi means you see everybody equally. You're not looking that one is a Punjabi, you're not looking that one is, a Malayali, chameleon. You're not looking that one is an American, you're not looking that one is, half Kashmiri, half Bombay. You're not looking that one is white. You're not looking that one is brown. You're not looking that one is black. That vision changes. But rather, you start looking into people and you see that everybody is Krishna's eternal servant. You see, none of us are these bodies. Coming to the spiritual platform is like the rocket that really takes your consciousness beyond sectarianism. Now we all live with this sectarian consciousness, that I belong to this group, or I belong to that group, or I belong to this caste, or I belong to that caste, or I belong to this nation, or I belong to this or that or the other. But Krishna says, become spiritual. Chant Hare Krishna. Rise to the spiritual platform of life and go beyond all of this temporary stuff. If we can understand, I think Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Jit Krishna Das E Vishwash, Korli Tu Ar Dukanai. It says, we just have to understand that we're Krishna's eternal servants. And then Korli Tu Ar Dukanai. All the dukkha of life is finished. All the suffering of life is finished. Just by understanding that we're Krishna's servants. So he says, brahma-bhuta prasannatma nasochati nakangshati samak sarveshu bhuteshu. And then he says, mad bhaktim labate param. And then he says, when you come to that spiritual platform of life, you engage in my bhakti. You engage in my pure devotional service. Mad bhaktim labate param. On that supreme spiritual platform. So it sounds like a big thing. He says, ahaituky, aprtihata. But then he concludes by saying, yayatma, suprasidati. Who can tell me what that means?
The soul is supremely satisfied.
The soul will become supremely satisfied by bhakti. Your heart will become peaceful. Your heart will become satisfied simply by this Krishna Kirtana Gana and Artana Paro Primam Bhakti, by chanting Hare Krishna and by dancing. Chanting Hare Krishna and dancing, we just make spiritual advancement. Our hearts become washed. The fire of material existence, it becomes extinguished. You know, the lotus of our hearts open. We understand that we're not bodies, but we're spiritual souls. And then we get dipped into the nectar ocean of love of God. Instead of going to the Cornish and taking a bath over there in that ocean, you know, you go inside of the ocean of loving Krishna, which is something wonderful, very, very wonderful. Now, in South Africa the other day, I was telling the devotees a story. Last Saturday we had the most amazing kirtan in Durban, South Africa. We had hundreds of people. And they were devotees. It was a kirtan program. And I was there, and His Holiness Govinda Swami was there. Hundreds and hundreds of devotees in one of our temples in Durban, South Africa. And we had people of all different colors. We had African people, we had Indian people, we had white people. Everybody was just chanting and dancing in ecstasy. And not for 15 minutes, and not for half an hour, and not for 1 hour, but the kirtan went on for like 3 or 4 hours. It was a dancing kirtan. It wasn't a sit-down kirtan. It was like full dancing kirtan for hours and hours and hours. And even myself, you know, being an old man, I was right in the thick of it, you know, just dancing like I was a boy. And these African people, ooh, when you see them dancing kirtan, it's just like, it's so wonderful, it's ecstatic, you know. They do stuff that you can't imagine in kirtan. And we were telling this story about Srila Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada's last days in Vrindavan. Maybe some of you have seen that film of Srila Prabhupada, his final days in Vrindavan. Well, the devotees who were caring for Prabhupada, they had a policy that every afternoon they would read mail that was coming from around the world, and they would read these very upbeat letters to Srila Prabhupada talking about the preaching in different places in order to pick Prabhupada's spirits up. And I remember one time a letter came in, and it was from Paris. And it mentioned how that all the devotees in the Paris temple went on a marathon on the weekend to distribute Bhagavad Gitas because they knew that would make Prabhupada feel good. And there's one devotee, on the weekend alone, he distributed something like 3,000 Bhagavad Gitas. One devotee. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj, when he read it, he was like shocked, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj was super intelligent, and he immediately made a calculation. He said, Srila Prabhupada, that means that this man was distributing, you know, a Bhagavad Gita every 27 seconds. Can you imagine? Just Prabhupada becoming enlivened. Prabhupada would say, if I hear reports like this, I will be so enlivened that I can live 100 years. And then one report came from South Africa, and it was about a temple opening in South Africa, in Cato Ridge, South Africa. And this was like during the time of racism in South Africa. And during that period, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but during the period of racism in South Africa, the white people lived in one area, and the Indian people lived in one area, and the colored people lived in one area, and the African people lived in another area. Everybody was segregated, and no one could come together. It was against the law. But ISKCON, they had a temple where Indians, whites, and Africans, they were all living together. It was called Cato Ridge. And so a newspaper clipping came from the opening of the Cato Ridge each temple. And so Tamal Krishna Maharaj was reading it to Srila Prabhupada. And, it began describing the temple that had been opened. And then the article said, the Krishna consciousness movement is such a wonderful process and it is so transcendental that everybody who engages in it becomes happy, healthy, and holy. Srila Prabhupada heard this slogan, happy, healthy, and holy. Like laying on his bed, and Prabhupada wasn't moving too much because he was so weak. When Prabhupada heard that, he said, read it again. And so then they read the Krishna consciousness movement. It helps people to become happy, healthy, and holy. And Srila Prabhupada got a big smile on his face. And he said, it's a fact. He said, before people took up the chanting of Hare Krishna, before people took up dancing in Kirtan, you were all so miserable. He said, but now that you're chanting and dancing, you become so happy. And before Krishna consciousness, he said, so many of you had such bad habits, such bad, unhealthy habits. You were eating the wrong food, you were eating forbidden things, you were drinking things that you shouldn't drink, you were doing so many bad things. But now by following this process, you become so healthy, happy, healthy, and what to speak, you become holy. He said you become effulgent because you become Krishna bhaktas. Prabhupada said, this is very good, happy, healthy, and holy. And then he said, continue reading. And so Tamal Krishna Maharaj kept reading. And then there was a line that said, this Krishna consciousness movement has been established for smashing bogus yogis. And when Srila Prabhupada heard this bogus yogis, a big smile came to his face. Because Srila Prabhupada, he was so elderly and so senior, and he was Krishna's pure devotee, that if anybody was giving any swami or guru was presenting some incorrect idea, immediately Prabhupada would just boom and smash them, and reveal where they were at. And so Prabhupada said, read it again. He says, the Krishna consciousness movement smashes the bogus yogis. And so then Srila Prabhupada started speaking about some so-called popular god men in India. And Prabhupada gave his critique on these people. And he concluded by saying, anyhow, it's just, they're absolutely hopeless. And when Prabhupada was speaking this way, he had no energy. He was laying on his bed and he was preaching so strongly, and he was preaching, and he was just so much bhakti was coming out. Then Tamal Krishna Maharaj looked at Prabhupada and he said, Srila Prabhupada, this Krishna consciousness movement is an unlimited ocean of ecstasy. And Prabhupada went, what did you say? And Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, Prabhupada, the Krishna consciousness movement is an ocean of ecstasy. Prabhupada said, what did you say? And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, Prabhupada, this Krishna consciousness movement based on chanting and dancing and reading your books and becoming advanced in spiritual life, it's an ocean of ecstasy. It is anandam buddhi vardhanam. And when Srila Prabhupada heard this, anandam buddhi vardhanam, then Prabhupada's hand rose up from the bed. And his hand was shaking in the air like this, because he was so weak. And in a very loud voice, Prabhupada said, Param vijayate Shri Krishna sankirtana. Then Prabhupada's hand fell back down to the bed. That's how wonderful the Krishna consciousness movement is. It transforms us. It helps us to become Krishna's pure devotee. Helps us to become advanced. Helps us to start to develop the samadristi, where we can see one another as who we really are. Helps us to develop love for one another. Helps us to care for one another. Helps helps us to be unmotivated in that way. So, chanting and dancing. So now we're going to try it again. Okay, we're going to chant some more. And everybody please chant very loudly. Okay? When we travel around, we want to hear everybody singing very, very loudly, because when we hear that pure sound of the holy name, it gives us so much joy to our hearts. So I'm very rude. When I just began speaking, but I'd like to say that I'm really happy that I could come here to Muscat and be with you all. Rasa has been asking me for a long time, but because I'm always wandering here and there in this world, and because I'm getting old, I always forget about, when people invite me to come places. And I guess it was during Kartik one day I was sitting at my home in Vrindavan, and I got a call from Rasa. He said, "I'm coming to your house." And then he came and with the Purva Mataji, and then we just nailed down dates that I would come over here. So I'm very happy to be with you all, and thank you all for inviting me to come to your nice yatra and to share some time with you. It's an honor for me. I came here a long time ago, and I've just been wandering around ever since, and I'm very glad to be back and have your association service. Thank you all. Now we're going to chant Hare Krishna, and everybody has to chant loudly, okay? Okay?
Yes.